The sound cuts through everything else in the gym, not the usual grunt of exertion or slap of gloves against pads. This is different, sharper. The unmistakable crack of a perfectly timed counterstrike finding its mark. Marcus Chen, 3rd degree, black belt, stumbles backward across the mat. His mouth guard dangles loose from his lips. Sweat streams down his face. Not the good kind from pushing limits, but the cold sweat of shock, of realization, of pride crumbling like old concrete. Across, from him stands a man in custodial coveralls, gray at the temples, calloused hands held in perfect fighting position. And in his eyes, those calm, patient eyes, lies a depth that Marcus is only now beginning to understand. How did a friendly sparring match with the gym's janitor turn into this moment of reckoning? The Iron Phoenix Martial Arts Academy buzzed with evening energy. At 28, Marcus Chen had earned his reputation the hard way, 3 tournament championships, a teaching certification younger students respected, a sidekick that could snap boards like kindling. He wore his black belt like others wore expensive watches, not just as a tool, but as a statement. "Keep your guard up, Tommy," Marcus called to a brown belt struggling through combinations. "You're dropping your left hand every time you throw. That cross." As the advanced class wound down, Marcus noticed him. The janitor, same as always, waiting patiently by the supply closet with his cart of cleaning equipment. Samuel, maybe? Marcus realized with embarrassment that he'd never bothered to ask. The man was probably in his 50s. Average height, nothing remarkable except the way he moved. Economical, balanced, like someone who'd never wasted a motion in his life. Another great class, Marcus, called Jessica, one of the senior students. As students filtered out, Marcus found himself lingering. The janitor, Samuel, he finally remembered, began his nightly routine, moving with that same unhurried precision Marcus had noticed but never really considered. "You know," Marcus said, "I see you here every night. You must pick up something just from watching, right?" Samuel looked up from the mat he was cleaning. "I try to stay out of the way during classes." "No, I mean, all this. You watch people throw kicks and punches every day. Must be tempting to try it yourself." There was something in Samuel's pause that Marcus couldn't read. "I appreciate what you all do here. It's an art form." Art form, not sport, not fighting. The phrase stuck in Marcus's mind. Have you ever trained? Before this job? Samuel's hands never stopped moving, methodically cleaning. A long time ago. What? Style? Little bit of everything. The answers were too careful, too measured. Marcus felt his curiosity sharpen into something else. A challenge, maybe. Or an opportunity to show off. "You know what?" Marcus said, warming to an idea that felt both generous and self-serving. "Why don't you stick around after cleaning? We could go a few rounds. Nothing serious, just light sparring. I bet you'd enjoy it." Other students, still gathering gear, began to pay attention. Marcus could feel their interest like heat from a fire. Samuel straightened slowly. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Not fear, but consideration, like a man weighing options others couldn't see. "I appreciate the offer, but I wouldn't want to take up your time." "Come on," Marcus pressed. "When's the last time you got to play around? Live a little. Besides, it'll be fun for everyone to watch." The words hung in the air. Marcus realized he'd made this public. Half the advanced class was listening. Samuel set down his spray bottle. When he looked at Marcus, there was something different in his eyes. Not anger, not hurt, something cooler and more unsettling. "Light sparring," he said. "It wasn't a question. Absolutely, just for fun." Samuel nodded. "Once. Give me a few minutes to finish up." Word spread through the gym faster than Marcus expected. Students who'd been heading for cars drifted back inside. Phone cameras appeared. Within minutes, people who'd already made it home were turning around. Marcus tried to maintain his casual attitude, but he could feel expectations settling around him like armor. This was supposed to be fun, lighthearted, a chance to give the hard-working janitor a thrill and maybe show off for the gathering crowd. So why did his mouth feel dry? Samuel worked steadily through his routine, seemingly unbothered by the growing audience. When he finally finished and began pushing his cart toward storage, the gym had filled with nearly 30 people. "Need some gear?" Marcus called. "What do you usually use for light sparring?" 16-ounce gloves, shin guards, mouth guards, obviously. No headgear? Marcus felt a flicker of confusion. "Not for light contact, unless you want to?" Samuel shook his head. No headgear. Something about the way he said it made Marcus's stomach tighten. Not fear. Marcus had never been afraid in a sparring match. But there was certainty in Samuel's voice that suggested headgear wasn't a safety concern. It was an impediment. As Samuel changed into a borrowed GI, it fit perfectly, like he'd worn one 1,000 times. Marcus studied the older man more carefully. The way he tied his belt, the ritual of it, no hesitation, no fumbling with unfamiliar motions. "Where did you say you trained before?" Marcus asked. Samuel finished adjusting his belt, a plain white belt that somehow looked entirely natural. "I didn't say." They touched gloves in the center of the mat. Around them, the gym had fallen silent except for fluorescent hum and distant traffic. Marcus settled into his fighting stance, left foot forward, hands up, weight balanced. A stance that had served him through countless sparring sessions and 3 tournament victories. Samuel's stance was different, older somehow. Feet positioned more squarely, hands held lower but with relaxed readiness that spoke of absolute confidence. It looked almost casual, except for his eyes. Those calm, measuring eyes seemed to catalog every detail of Marcus's positioning. Marcus began with a simple combination, jab to test distance, followed by a low kick. Basic, safe, the kind of opener that let you gauge reflexes without committing to anything dangerous. Samuel's response was so subtle, Marcus almost missed it. A slight shift of his front foot. A minute hip adjustment. The jab passed through empty air. The low kick struck nothing. Samuel hadn't blocked, hadn't ducked dramatically or jumped backward. He'd simply moved just enough to make Marcus's techniques miss by millimeters. The kind of defensive work that took years to develop, being exactly where attacks weren't rather than where they were. Marcus reset, confidence intact, but attention sharpened. So the janitor had some basic footwork. Good. For him. Time to step things up. Marcus launched into a more complex combination. Jab cross hook, flowing into a knee strike designed to overwhelm Samuel's defenses. He'd used this sequence dozens of times against tournament opponents. Samuel moved like water. The punches passed through space where his head had been. The knee. Strike found no target as Samuel seemed to simply not be there anymore. And then before Marcus could fully process what had happened, he felt a light tap on his ribs, so quick and gentle he barely registered it. Samuel had moved inside Marcus's combination, slipped the punches, and delivered a perfectly timed counter-strike. In a real fight, it would have been fight-ending. In this sparring match, it was little more than a tap, a teacher correcting a student's posture. The gym was absolutely silent. Marcus tried again and again, each time his techniques that had earned him victories, techniques he'd taught dozens of students, found nothing but air. And each time Samuel's gentle corrections followed. A tap to the solar plexus, a light touch to the side of the head, touches that said, here. And here. And here too. Around them the crowd began to murmur. "Who is he? Look at that footwork. Did you see that slip? That was beautiful. Is he playing with Marcus?" Marcus heard the voices like distant thunder. His world had narrowed to the space between himself and Samuel, to the growing understanding that nothing he tried was working. Everything was being gently, almost kindly neutralized. He threw a spinning back kick, one of his signature techniques. Samuel took one step to the side and let it pass, then moved forward and placed his palm lightly against Marcus's exposed back. In a real fight, Marcus would have been on the ground. Here, it was just another lesson. "Jesus," someone whispered. "Look at his hands." Marcus glanced at Samuel's hands as they reset. For the first time, he really looked. They were scarred. Not the random scars of accident or manual labor, but the specific, methodical scarring of knuckles that had met heavy bags and makiwara boards thousands of times. "Samuel," Marcus said, breathing hard despite having barely landed a technique. "What did you say your background was?" Samuel's expression remained calm, almost apologetic. "I didn't say." "Were you professional?" The question hung in the air. Around the gym, conversations had stopped entirely. Samuel considered the question with careful attention. For a while, Marcus felt his legs trembling, not from exhaustion, but from slow dawning understanding. "What name did you fight under?" Samuel shook his head gently. That was a long time ago, but someone in the crowd had put it together. Marcus heard a sharp intake of breath, then a voice thick with disbelief. "Holy shit! Is that Samuel Silent Washington?" The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. He knew that name. Every serious martial artist knew that name, Samuel Washington, three-time world champion, the man who'd retired at the height of his career without explanation, disappearing from the fighting world completely. That had been 15 years ago. Marcus looked at the man across from him, really looked, and saw the years between them stretching out like an unbridgeable gap. Not years of age, years of mastery, years of dedication to the craft Marcus was only beginning to understand. "Mr. Washington," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Samuel's expression softened slightly. Just Samuel. Around them, the gym erupted in whispers as people pulled out phones and began frantically searching. Photos from 15 years ago appeared on screens. A younger Samuel Washington holding championship belts, standing calm and composed after victories that had stunned the martial arts world. "Why didn't you tell us?" someone called from the crowd. Samuel's answer was simple. "You never asked." Marcus felt the weight of 30 people watching him. Part of him wanted to stop to bow out gracefully, but a larger part needed to continue. "I'd like to keep going," Marcus said. "If that's all right with you?" Samuel studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Light contact?" Light contact. But something had changed. The playful sparring session was over. This was something else now, a teaching moment. A master class delivered in real time to a student who had unknowingly challenged his teacher. Marcus approached with new humility, his techniques cleaner but more respectful. Instead of trying to overwhelm, he focused on precision. Instead of hunting for quick victories, he tried to learn from each exchange. Samuel responded to this change like a tuning fork, responding to perfect pitch. His movements became more instructive, showing Marcus not just where his techniques failed, but why they failed. A lesson in efficiency disguised as sparring. For 5 minutes, they moved together in a kind of martial dance, Marcus attacking with growing understanding, Samuel defending and countering with the patience of someone who had spent decades perfecting his craft. The crowd watched in absolute silence, recognizing they were witnessing something rare, the passing of knowledge from master to student. Finally, Samuel stepped back and raised his hands. "That's enough for me." As they removed their gloves, Marcus found himself at a loss for words. Everything he thought he'd known about fighting, about mastery, about respect, had been quietly rearranged in 30 minutes. "I'm sorry," he said finally. Samuel looked genuinely puzzled. "For what?" "For the way I approached this. For assuming." Samuel's smile was warm, without a trace of condescension. You saw someone you thought you could help have some fun. That's not something to apologize for, but I was showing off. Maybe a little. But you were also curious. Curiosity is how we learn. Would you— Marcus hesitated. Would you be willing to work with us sometime, the advanced students? I think we could learn a lot. Samuel considered this with careful attention. I have a job here that I take seriously, but if there's time, if it wouldn't interfere, I'd be honored. The crowd began to disperse, voices buzzing with excitement, but Marcus barely noticed the chaos around them. He was focused on Samuel, who had returned to his cleaning cart as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Samuel, can I ask you something? Samuel nodded, pulling his cleaning supplies from the cart. Why didn't you come back? To competition, I mean. You were at the top of your game. Samuel was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if he'd overstepped. Then, still focused on organizing his supplies, he spoke. I learned everything I needed to learn in that world. And I realized that the most important lessons aren't taught in competitions. They're taught in moments like this. Person to person, when someone is ready to receive them. Marcus felt the truth of those words settle in his chest, like a seed finding soil. As Samuel began to spray down the area where they'd sparred, Marcus found himself bowing. Not the casual bow that ended most sparring sessions, but a deeper bow, the kind reserved for teachers, for masters. For moments of genuine respect. Samuel looked up from his work, slightly surprised. Then, setting down his spray bottle, he returned the bow with equal formality. Thank you, Marcus said. Thank you for asking, Samuel replied. Marcus gathered his gear and headed for the door, his mind racing with plans. He would restructure his teaching, focus more on fundamentals, lead with humility. At the door, he turned back for one last look. Samuel was back at work, methodically cleaning the mat, where they'd sparred. The same quiet, efficient movements, the same humble focus on the task at hand, but Marcus would never see it the same way again. He understood now that he'd been watching mastery every night for months without recognizing it. True mastery, the kind that wore custodial coveralls and asked for nothing more than the opportunity to do good work. In the parking lot, Marcus sat in his car for a long moment. His phone buzzed with messages from friends who had already seen the video footage. Questions, amazement, requests for details about the legendary Samuel Washington. But Marcus wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Some experiences needed time to settle before they could be shared. Some lessons required silence to take root properly. He drove home through empty streets, his mind quiet for the first time in years. Tomorrow, he would return to teaching, but he would return as a different teacher. One who understood that the most profound lessons often came from the most unexpected sources. The night he learned that mastery isn't about dominating others or proving superiority. It's about serving something larger than yourself with such dedication that the work itself becomes a form of art. The night he learned to truly bow. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful true stories. Drop a comment with your thoughts and tell us, what truth are you brave enough to speak today?